Welcome to the Sarah Finkelstein Show. Are you a fan of the Roth IRA? In order to know whether you are or not, you need some general knowledge about the differences between saving money in a Roth IRA as opposed to saving money for your retirement in a traditional IRA. So the traditional IRA came about in 1974, and it was established by the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, otherwise known as ERISA, of 1974. So the traditional IRA allows you to contribute funds into the traditional IRA, and you get a tax deduction for the year of contribution. So for example, in 2022, we can still make a contribution for the year of 2021, or if we have already done so, we can make a contribution for the taxable year of 2022. And for the amount that you contribute to your traditional IRA, whether it's $6,000 or if you're over the age of 50, it's an additional $1,000 catch-up amount for a total of $7,000. You get to deduct that contribution on your income tax return. And what that does is it lowers your tax bill for that year. So that money grows tax deferred. Now, what does tax deferred mean? That means that during the growth phase of your traditional IRA, you are not paying any taxes. We are deferring the taxes to a future point where eventually when we start to take money out of it, we will be taxed on it. Remember, it's got to be taxed sooner or later. So basically what you're doing is you're getting a tax deduction on the crop, on that initial deposit each time that you deposit for a taxable year. Eventually, that whole amount will grow into a harvest, a big number. Remember, you might be contributing to your traditional IRA for 20 or 30 or 40 years, or maybe even more. So that money is going to grow over time. And so you're taking a deduction on your income tax return for a small piece, and it's going to grow to a much bigger number, and that bigger number is going to be eventually all taxable down the road. Now, we don't know today what those tax rates are going to be 20, 30, or 40 years down the road. If you are a high wage earner, then you're probably getting a very small deduction on your income tax return if you are contributing to a traditional IRA. So basically what you're doing is you're saving money now on your taxes. But what's going to happen down the road in the future when you start to take money out of that traditional IRA that has never been taxed? If you are under the age of 59 and a half and you take money out of your traditional IRA, you will have to deal with a 10% tax penalty as well as ordinary income taxes on that amount that you withdrew from your traditional IRA. So there is a myth that a lot of people have, which is taxes will be lower when I am retired. But most people find themselves in a higher tax bracket in retirement. Why? Because they're collecting Social Security income, because they have required minimum distributions from their traditional IRA and their 401k plans. Now, if you convert your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, then you will not have to take required minimum distributions. So a lot of people think that when they are retired in the future, that they will be in a lower tax bracket. And again, none of us can predict for sure what taxes will look like in the future, decades down into the future. But with a traditional IRA, you do have to start taking RMDs, required minimum distributions. Why? Why does the government force you to start taking money from your IRA? Well, the answer is because that money has never been taxed, and the government wants their cut on the money. It used to be that you would have to start taking your RMDs by April 1st of the year you turn 70 and a half. I'm sorry, April 1st following the year you turn 70 and a half. But that has since changed. Now RMDs have to be by age 72. And if you're not aware and you miss it, you will have a huge tax penalty for not taking your required minimum distribution. And be forewarned, that tax penalty is 50% of the amount that you were supposed to take and did not take. So just be aware, because nobody's going to tell you, hey, it's time to take a required minimum distribution. Now, did you know that if you are partaking in a 401k plan at work, which is referred to as a qualified retirement plan, you can also make a contribution to an IRA in most cases. So let's compare the traditional IRA to the Roth IRA. Now, why is it called the Roth IRA? Simply because it was the late former Senator William Roth of Delaware that devised the Roth IRA, because he felt that people should have a possibility of getting tax-free income in retirement. And this was written into law in 1997 under the Taxpayer Relief Act. The very big and powerful difference of the Roth IRA is that that money will grow tax-free as long as you abide by the rules. So although you do not get to deduct it off of your taxable contribution year, whether you're contributing again for 2021 or 2022, you will not get to deduct that off of your income tax return. However, that amount plus all of the growth on that money will be tax-free, not only to you, but to your beneficiaries as well. So keep that in mind. Now, with the Roth IRA, there are no RMDs, no required minimum distributions. Why? Because the government got their taxes up front. They got their cut up front when you made your contribution, because it is after tax dollars that are going into the Roth IRA. Now, non-spouse beneficiaries are subject to required minimum distributions in a Roth IRA, but it's almost always tax-free. So you may want to consider possibly maybe converting some of your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA if you're concerned about future taxes being much higher than they are today. So remember, the Roth IRA is funded with after-tax dollars. So the government doesn't care because they're getting their cut up front. But you must have earned income, whether you're contributing to a traditional IRA or to a Roth IRA, you have to have earned income, at least as much as what you are contributing. So earned income can come from a job or a business or from commissions, but you cannot contribute more than what you have earned. So there are some earnings limits in order to qualify to put money into and take advantage of a Roth IRA. So let me go through those numbers. For this year, for 2022, if you are single and your modified adjusted gross income is less than $129,000, you can contribute the full amount to the Roth IRA. So remember, if you're 50 or older, you can contribute $7,000 for each year. If you're under that age, you can contribute $6,000. Now, what if your modified adjusted gross income is somewhere between the range of $129,000 and $144,000? Then you can make a partial contribution into a Roth IRA. But if your modified adjusted gross income is above that number, if it's over $144,000, you cannot make a contribution into a Roth IRA. If you are married for 2022 and your modified adjusted gross income is less than $204,000, then you can make a full contribution into the Roth IRA. If your income, your modified adjusted gross income, falls somewhere between $204,000 and $214,000, you can make a partial contribution to your Roth IRA. And if your if your modified adjusted gross income is above $214,000, then you do not qualify to make a Roth contribution. Now, did you know that with your Roth contribution, your Roth IRA, you do have to hold it for at least 5 years and age 59 and a half, and then you can take all of it out tax-free. What if you start your Roth at the age of 70? Well, you have to keep it for at least 5 years. However, the contributions that you make into the Roth, you could always take out without any penalties. It's the earnings that are subject to 5 years and age 59 and a half. So if you are concerned that this wonderful Roth IRA, which is really, think of it as a gift from the government, because how else are you going to set up your retirement account where you can access those funds tax-free? It is a gift. And if you have not yet opened your Roth IRA, please do so. And what if the government changes tax laws and they make the Roth IRA maybe not tax-free down the road? Hopefully, you will be grandfathered in. So anybody who has a Roth IRA, I'm hoping if there are tax changes down the road, that we will be all grandfathered in. So make sure that you get your Roth IRA opened. And remember, a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, do not think of it necessarily as something that is risky, because that depends on how you invest your Roth IRA. You can put anything, well, not anything. You could put many different types of vehicles into a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Remember, you could put in a bank savings account, you could put in mutual funds, you can put in stocks or bonds. So it's not necessarily whether the traditional IRA or the Roth IRA is risky. It depends on how that is invested. Thank you for joining me on the Sarah Finkelstein Show, where we like to share valuable information and, of course, always consult with your tax professional before you make any decisions. That is my advice to you, and that's a little disclaimer. And you can find the Sarah Finkelstein Show on iHeartRadio, Spotify, SoundCloud, LinkedIn, YouTube, and also on our website, www.signatureadvisorygroup. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. And join us next time.